I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes! Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus. Hello to those of you in Bowling Green, Tuesday night at 10, and welcome to everyone on the internet, wherever and whenever you may be. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my fantabulous co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and together Rebecca and I are going to be bringing you an hour of unforgettable radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment, and we talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your families and your pets and the wild turkeys that Rebecca and I saw coming in, and the geese.
Wild turkey.
Wild turkey. Okay, yes.
It was a wild turkey.
Yes, but it was a really nice looking one.
It was. It was
Okay.
very beautiful.
Okay. And the geese and the raptors that are migrating back up from the south, and the bluebirds and the robins and pretty much everybody and everything, because, like it or not, all of us are wrapped up together on this fantastic little planet called Earth.
There is a giant hawk of some kind living on top of the roof of an old barn on what's the oldest house in my neighborhood, which my neighborhood is mostly like very, very tied to the auto industry, very 20th century. But the oldest house, I think, was there before everything else, and it has like a barn behind it, and it's just in ruin, and cats come in out of it all the time. So I very much fear that the hawk might be living on cats.
Well, once you get into that food web,
Circle
once
of
you go feral,
life. Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
prices to be paid, whether no
True.
matter how cute and cuddly you are.
Yes.
So the cats are eating bunnies, so
It's true.
you look
it's
at it
true.
from that direction.
Yeah. The bunnies at least will get some relief from the hawk.
So what we're going to do is we're going to chat for just another 10 minutes or so, and then we have a returning guest who has been on for a while, but one of our favorites, Diane D'Arrigo from Nuclear
Hey.
Information Resource Service, is going to be back, and she's going to be telling us about what's happening down there in Pennsylvania, where Bill Gates has this mad scientist scheme to restart the shuttered 3 Mile Island nuclear reactor. So we'll hear about that.
Oy vey.
And then it's advertisers and patrons, to whom we are eternally grateful, and some public announcements too. And then Rebecca, it'll be your turn, and what will we be talking about today?
In honor of Lent, I will be talking about fish.
Fish. Okay. Sounds good. And then it's ecological news, and I've started out with some good news. I'm trying to keep things kind of upbeat here. But the last ecological news story is like truly bizarre. So you might want to stick around for that one. But that's it. That's our show. Except we're also hoping to hear from you at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. You can call and talk to us about any ecological issue that you have come across in the last week, and we'd be happy to drop everything and have a chat. Okay, so like I said, Rebecca and I had an interesting drive in. It has been raining, and we're seeing cars drive through some huge puddles there on the road.
It's
I mean,
daylight in the swamp.
yeah, and apparently this is just a tiny foretaste of what we're going to get later today. It's supposed to get really delugey, but there's already lots of standing water on the roads and cars driving with wakes in some places. So be careful out there. I did want to just mention that it's today is 18 degrees above average according to my weather app, and there are flowers coming up like with names like snowdrops.
Oh my.
Actually, the snowdrops are almost all gone already, and there was no snow with the snowdrops.
Yeah.
And my friend and I were walking along yesterday. We were identifying, using her app on her phone to identify all the little flowers that are coming up in the yards, and almost all of them are like early spring flower. Often seen in snow, and of course, it's 18 degrees above zero. There's
Yep.
no snow anywhere around, and so, I know most of you, and I know most Americans, even though our media doesn't give this impression, but most Americans understand that we're caught in a global warming cycle. And as we say here, always try to push the point here in For a Green Future, we're caught in a,
Positive feedback loop.
thank you, yes. And so the rate of heat is accelerating and the problems are getting worse. But I wanted to comment on a comment that a fellow named Robert Reich made on Facebook, and he's a guy from the Obama administration, a very liberal commentator, as they're called. And he said yesterday, he did a Facebook post, and this is a quote here: "I'm not going to sugarcoat this. We are in the worst national emergency of our lives. It is not coming directly from threats we should be coping with, climate change, destroying our planet, and then he lists off a whole bunch of other issues. And his point is that the worst possible thing is Trump and all his policies and what he's doing to the federal government and his attempt to become a dictator. But I'm going to disagree with Robert Reich here because in actuality, the climate change destroying our planet is the biggest threat. I mean, humans, I am not a fan of, this is not a defense of dictatorship by any means, okay? But humans have survived dictatorships. In fact, you could make an argument that, at least in European culture, if you call like monarchies dictatorships, which I mean, functionally, there's really no difference. Humans have been under dictatorships for
They
thousands
have
and thousands
fancier
of years.
stuff.
Yeah,
So, much fancier stuff.
That's true. They have like big, flashy castles and things. But my
Old
point,
fancy stuff.
yes. But my point is that human beings can survive dictatorships. We've survived them in the past. We'll probably be surviving them in the future. I am cheered whenever we overthrow a dictatorship and put an actual democracy in place. Even Germany survived Hitler. Hitler was like the worst dictator.
Not
Yeah.
everybody survived that.
Not everybody survived it,
Yeah.
but
Quite a few people did not.
we as humans on this planet, if the global warming gets high enough, it's entirely possible that we will not survive it.
Right.
Okay, this is the worst thing facing us right now. These problems with Trump, they are political problems. They're serious. We shouldn't ignore them by any means. But we can't put fixing global warming on the back burner while we deal with Trump, because that will eventually trump everything else. Okay, it doesn't matter who's president if there's no food because all the crops in North America failed.
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't matter who's president or what their term of office is if the temperature outside is 130 degrees Fahrenheit and your air conditioning has failed because the overheating of the grid caused by the too much heat means that you have no way to cool down.
Well, at the same time, though, like, how are you going to try and do activism and influence the dictator to do something good without the right to petition for redress if that gets eroded, like the way that activists are being put in jail really just for being activists at this point?
Well, I mean, that is a good point. I know, and if people have an opinion on that, call in at 877-909-1007.
I have no answers. I'm just objecting to, for the sake of argument. I don't know.
Well, and it's certainly true that most of the dictatorships are responding very poorly to the crisis.
Yeah,
You know, the countries that are responding the best are the ones with the strongest democracies, you know, like in Europe. Okay, the Europeans are kicking our butts when it comes to adapting to climate change, to getting off of fossil fuels, partly because they're doing it democratically and everybody's on board. And that's how you get countries like Norway, where they get 97% of their cars are electric cars now. They put government policies in place to encourage it, and the people of the country want it to happen. And so that's the ideal. Now, dictatorships are, like, part of the problem with a dictatorship is it's stupid, okay? Because you're only as smart as the people at top in a dictatorship, and those people are generally people who only know how to, like, crush other people. You know, they're not terribly intelligent people. And so what we see in the dictatorship of China, you know, they are responding to the global warming crisis. They're putting up windmills and solar panels like crazy, but they're also at the same time building more coal plants and building nuclear plants. And so they're doing an all of the above, which is
and what is this Bitcoin mining thing? I don't understand this. It's like real life mining that's related to Bitcoins in some way, right?
Well, it's what it is that the Bitcoin, the way you generate Bitcoin is by running computers at, you know, using huge power withdrawals for years, sometimes months and years. You've got computers churning away to create these numbers that somehow represent a Bitcoin. And so what you've got to do is, so what they're doing is they're burning real resources. They're mining coal and actually burning it to run fossil fuel generating stations that churn computers out to create these, to find these numbers, which is a Bitcoin. So it's totally insane. All right.
It sounds pretty screwy, but
it is. It is just
lots of weird stuff is going on. So
yeah. So, but you know, just keep that in mind over the next, you know, little while. I mean, when we have a day like today or yesterday when it was 72 degrees here, you know, it's easy to remember that the global warming really is happening. And even though people are telling you it's not, you know, most of us still understand that it is. And so don't lose that, you know, don't get persuaded by the propaganda, because, you know, you could feel it, you could see it. It's physically, literally happening to you every time you step outside. So hold on to your own experiences and impressions, and don't let the potential of a dictator scare you away from it. Okay, but one thing we do know is that there is no nuclear solution to the global warming crisis. The nukes just take too long, they're too dirty, they're too expensive. But that hasn't stopped some of the billionaires of this planet to try to push nuclear power. And specifically, there's a situation going on down there in Harrisburg. They want to restart the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant.
Oh, Lord.
And a friend of the show, Diane D'Arrigo, was actually there on Friday, and we're hoping to get a report on what happened down there in Harrisburg. Diane, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you perfectly, yes. So welcome back to the
show. I
show.
realized I'm on a cell that I should have called you on a landline, but hopefully we'll keep connection.
Yes, fingers crossed. But yeah, you sound great. So you were in Pennsylvania on Friday.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what was going on there.
Well, it was just 46 years ago that 3 Mile Island, one of the worst nuclear accidents in the U.S. It's often touted as the worst, but we also have to remember that around this time, there was also a huge leak of release of radioactivity down in Church Rock and contaminated the Rio Puerco. But today we're talking about 3 Mile Island, and another day we should definitely talk about the Rio Puerco and the uranium spill from mining and milling in the Southwest.
Oh, yeah.
So today, May 30th, is it, I think? It was just 46 years ago today that it was reported that there was a hydrogen bubble in the nuclear reactor, and they started venting radioactive gases until that bubble dissipated. And one of the things that I learned about that was a result of 3 Mile Island is that up until that time, there was a 5-mile radius around nuclear reactors that were their so-called evacuation zones. Because of 3 Mile Island, the evacuation zone it was extended to 10 miles, and in reality, the contamination could be much worse. It depends on the wind and the weather and so forth. So folks gathered at 3 Mile Island in the Capitol, in the rotunda of the state capitol in Harrisburg, to protest Constellation Energy's plans to restart Unit 1. The 3 Mile Island is two closed reactors right now. Unit 2 is the one that had the partial meltdown in 1979, and Unit 1 operated from about 1974 until for about 46 years, and it stopped for a little while during the Unit 2 meltdown disaster, but it basically has accumulated in the range of 700 metric tons of radioactive waste, and I think it's common knowledge that the disaster, well, to many people, maybe not to all, that the disaster was devastating to the community. Mothers of children who have now become grandmothers and great-grandmothers have regathered. The concerned mothers and women have reformed a group to continue to fight, or to resume their fight against restarting 3 Mile Island. There were 3 or 4 of them who were at the press conference in Harrisburg on March 28th, reminding everyone of what the disaster was, the lies, the incompetence, the dangers, and actually the health effects, that people did die, that people did get sick, and some are still. So the lies we were reminded of the lies, which are being retold as Constellation tries to restart the Unit 1 reactor at 3 Mile Island.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's important to stress that that idea about the lying, because I think it was a time when people largely, before 3 Mile Island, had a great deal of faith in like technology and the guys in white coats, and the government too, to a large degree. But what happened with 3 Mile Island is that again and again they were just caught lying about the accident, about the seriousness, about about putting radiation into the environment, and that was really kind of a important lesson for that generation. That in some ways the current generation seems to, that lesson hasn't seemed to transfer to the current generation in some ways.
Right. Originally we were told that it was electricity too cheap to meter, and it turned out to be the most expensive electricity available. We were told that a meltdown could never happen, and the meltdown happened at 3 Mile Island. We've been given multiple false promises. And then we were told that we would have a permanent repository for nuclear waste to isolate it by 1998. And we don't even have a technology to isolate radioactive waste, let alone a location. And of course, whatever location is chosen will be a sacrifice area because it's impossible to isolate material for as long as the radioactivity stays dangerous.
So this was a gathering of citizens then that held the press conference talking about it. What were some of the other things that were said there?
Okay, so the mothers spoke about their experiences, grandmothers now, great-grandmothers, and then folks who've been tracking the site. Scott Portzline is a technical expert. He talked about the steam generator problems, that there are thousands of tiny tubes through which water flows, the hot water from the core of the reactor, and then it makes other water hot to turn the turbines and make electricity. Well, those tubes can get pricked, they can break, they vibrate and rub against each other, and they wear. And then when they're sleeved or patched, it increases the pressure and it can make the problem worse. It's one of the reasons that the San Onofre nuclear reactors closed down in Southern California, and it's one of the generic safety issues that the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, acknowledges. This is a problem that 3 Mile Island 1 has. Well, since it closed, it's no longer a danger. But if it were to restart, then it would certainly have to be addressed. There'd have to be new generators or some way that it would be dealt with. I talked about that and other technical safety problems. Gene Stilp, who is a lawyer in Pennsylvania, has worked as an assistant to elected officials. He brought out a very beautiful display of on the table of kids' toys that were school buses to indicate that the dozens of schools that would have to evacuate. Hospitals, he had hospitals, little miniature hospitals. It was like to indicate the number of hospitals in the region that would have to evacuate. He mostly focused on the possibility of evacuation. I think I just said that there was a 5-mile evacuation zone, and the governor did recommend pregnant women and children be evacuated, but not until several days into the accident. But in this situation, we would have an impossibility in evacuating the entire area if need be. But anyway, he talked about hospitals, prisons, nursing homes, schools, just communities, people, downtown center. The reactor is on an island. The capital is pretty much on the river, and just a couple miles down the river is where 3 Mile Island is. And so the whole state government could be impacted if there were another accident. Mm-hmm. And we also talked about the waste that is generated, that has been generated, that is sitting on an island in the middle of the Susquehanna River. That's the high level or irradiated fuel waste that is accumulated, and at least because the reactors are closed, no more waste is being generated. But it's unresolved what's going to happen with high level and other levels of waste. The reactors themselves are contaminated, the soil on the island, and the containers that hold the waste are only designed for 50 years, and we know that the waste stays dangerous into the hundreds, thousands, literally millions of years. It's dangerous now and will be dangerous. So to claim that they're able to isolate waste for that long, one of the points that I made in my presentation was that in accepting at this time in history to accept new nuclear waste generation in one's community is to clearly accept that that community is a permanent waste storage area. We were lied to back when the reactor started in the early mid-'70s, saying, oh, yeah, there'll be a repository by 1998. But we know damn well now that there is not a repository, and even if there is, it may not be big enough for all of the waste that's generated. It probably won't isolate it. And so if any community is considering making more waste, that is starting new reactors, restarting old reactors, that they are basically consenting to become permanent nuclear waste storage areas.
Mm-hmm. Or to just shorten it a little bit, they'll become nuclear waste dumps, basically.
Yeah, and they want to rename the site the Crane Clean Energy Center. And basically what it would be is the Crane 3 Mile Island nuclear waste dump.
Right.
There are 2 other reactors in the country that are following this ridiculous path of trying to restart after closure. Palisades in Michigan, it operated for a little over around the range of 40 years, closed in 2022, and now there's a push to restart that.
Yeah,
and Duane Arnold in Iowa.
Yeah, we're not far from the Palisades. We've been reporting on that one right along. I actually didn't know about Duane Arnold.
And downwind.
Yeah.
Duane Arnold is in Iowa. It's not as far along as Palisades is the furthest along. But the Duane Arnold reactor, which closed in 2020, started its decommissioning in 2022, had operated for 45 years. They filed a licensing change request with the NRC and claim that they might be able to restart by 2028. The reactor was closed after a derecho, a damaging storm. You were just talking about climate change and storms. That was what pushed the Duane Arnold reactor to being closed. It lost offsite power and had damage to its cooling systems as a result of a derecho in 2020, and it closed later that year.
Yeah, we celebrated that one. That was one of our... Yeah, whenever there's a nuclear plant closure, we have a day of bliss here at For a Green Future. So, all right, well
let's have a day of bliss that it's going to stay closed. Let's hope.
All right. Well, Diane, I know you folks at NEARS have been, fighting this fight right along here all these years. So, how could people follow what you do and keep track of Nuclear Information Resource Service?
We have a website, www.nirs.org. We have, and then when you're on there, you can sign up for regular and maybe at most once a week email action alerts, more often once or twice a month, but it could be as much as once a week. And then there are also Facebook and Instagram options to follow us.
All right. Anything you'd like to add before we move on?
Well, commemorate 3 Mile Island. Did you do that already with your electricity out?
Well, that was that was March 11th. That was Fukushima. That was our unplugged nuclear power.
Okay.
Yeah, but
okay.
But it is important that we don't forget.
It's appropriate to commemorate.
To remember 3 Mile Island. All right.
Yeah, so we're at 46 years, and let's hope that we can keep it shut down and prevent the other ones from reopening and move to, push the PJM, the energy distributor, to authorize all of the renewable energy that's in the queue to get authorized to start. And if we were to actually use all of the available renewable energy, we wouldn't need this danger.
Hear, hear. All right. Well, thanks so much, Dan. And, keep fighting the good
You're
fight
welcome.
there.
Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
right.
well, some of these days, somebody's going to decide Chernobyl just needs some duct tape or something. The way we're going.
It's not looking good.
Yeah.
All right. So now it's time to thank our advertisers and patrons. And For Green Futures brought to you by the Wood County Park District. So imagine a place where nature meets adventure, where you can climb, paddle, fish, and explore. That place, it's right here in Wood County. The Wood County Park District is here to protect, preserve, and inspire. We conserve natural and cultural treasures so you can enjoy the outdoors like never before. By maintaining green spaces, providing fun programs, restoring wildlife habitats, and leading outdoor adventures. Want to connect with nature? Try your hand at archery, bouldering, geocaching, paddling, rappelling, and more. Whether you're seeking experience or a peaceful retreat, our parks are open every day from 8 a.m. until 30 minutes past sunset all year round. Come explore. Get outside, experience nature. Your parks, your adventures waiting for you. Find us online at wcparks.org or follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and X, or you can call 419-353-1897. The Wood County Park District, preserving nature, creating adventure, and inspiring a greener future. And just as a public service announcement, just going to do a quick brief on some of the things Wood County Park District's doing in April. They have a Learning How to Kayak on Tuesday, April 1st at WW Night Nature Preserve. At Carter Historic Farms on April 6th, the next Sunday, they're doing a root crop planting, which is a cool thing. Then they've got Mondays in April, they've got chair yoga in the parks, and then they've got just plain old yoga in the parks. They've got book clubs. They're doing something interesting on the 9th. It's Art Rebix. They're going to look at the painting American Gothic, and people are going to check into how, reproducing that. And of course, it's spring, and so they have their annual spring wildflower walks, and they're happening on Wednesdays all through April. And so once again, all you have to do is go to their website, wcparks.org, and sign up for those. And they're doing lots of other stuff too, more than we've got time to talk about, but that's the Wood County Park District. And of course, as always, we are very grateful to our patrons. Patrons are people who've gone to patreon.com. That's Patreon. There they searched for a Green Future. Up popped our Patreon page, and they went through and looked at the different membership levels, picked a membership level that matched their budget. And so every month, painlessly, a little money comes out of their account, comes over to us. And that's really how we keep this show going for all these years now. 6 years now we've been going. Thank you so much to our patrons. And please become one yourself. Just go to patreon.com and search for a Green Future. All right, Rebecca, you're up. Oh, wait, we have a caller. Okay.
Ooh, caller.
Go ahead, caller. Thanks for
I've
calling.
got a comment about our favorite local Don Wayne Knapp and Davis Plessy. It's Lake Erie. So they draw their water, their cooling water, via a pipe that extends north into Lake Erie. And with the winds that we see, our southwest is always pretty much always the prevailing wind, but it seems that, because I've been going out in that lake a long time, the air is stronger and longer, the blows. And what it does is it shifts the water north. You can think of it like tipping a cup of liquid. If you tip it to the left, the water is going to rise towards the liquid cup that way. And the wind does that in Lake Erie. Lake Erie is very shallow and very wide, and so it's not difficult for winds to blow water. For instance, the docks on the Canada side will be getting flooded. This pipe is in danger a lot of times of coming out of the water.
Oh.
Oh.
And which is disaster, meltdown. Nobody really knows. People know it. They know it. But I don't think they're making any steps to remediate it. I'd like to think they were, but I don't give them that much credit. So I just wanted to bring that to people's attention. If they've already fixed it, great. But I don't think it has been. And I just wanted to bring that up so people can be aware that, these kinds of things this is where those kinds of meltdowns happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know they've been spending millions of dollars fixing the voids in the concrete dome around the plant. There's been scaffolding up there for years, but I haven't seen anything or heard about anything of them sort of getting more resilient on their pipe, because that is a real thing, that the wind can blow the water levels around. We had actually earlier this year, we had incredibly low water levels. Port Clinton, people were walking way out into the bay because the water was gone. It was all up there by Canada. So,
well, my boat, I couldn't get to get my boat out of the water last year.
Mm-hmm.
It was early November. I had to pick a route that I could get, from the dock to where I could get the boat out, because it was so shallow. Areas where it's normally 5 feet deep, we're down to like 1.5 feet of water. So I just wanted to add that. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the call. And of course, what can happen is if all that water gets blown up north and piles up there on the Canada side, and then if the wind stops suddenly, it can all come rushing back, and it's like a tidal wave. It's called a seiche, and it can actually flood the area. And in fact, it did flood during the construction of Davis Bessie. Davis Bessie got flooded by a seiche, seiche, I guess it's called. And it was under 3 feet of water for a couple days. So, all right. Well, thanks for that reminder. Thanks for calling in, Rebecca. Back to you. So what are we talking about?
So, in honor of Lent, I thought I would just simply address the topic of fish.
Fish, okay.
Which a lot of the population are supposed to eat this month. Not me, thank God. I hate fish.
Oh,
I would just be eating so much beans and eggs if I were Catholic or even Christian. Fish, by definition, are aquatic vertebrates with gills, backbones, but no limbs with digits. I think they mean no limbs with digits and not no limbs. I think this includes the lobed fishes. They mention lobed fishes later. Those weirdo fishes that you can actually kind of stumble along on land for a minute to find another little deeper puddle that they're trying to survive in. Yeah, so, but they do not have any fingers or toes at the end of those lobes, which is what keeps them fish.
Okay.
Fish are in the phylum Chordata, like you and I, and therefore they share some characteristics like a dorsal nerve cord, or spinal cord in our case, skeletal supporting rod, or backbone, I guess, and also gill slits during life cycle, which you and I have gill slits in the womb, apparently, for a second.
We had them.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do not have them anymore. Right. So there are 5 major classes of fish: jawless, cartilaginous, bony, ray-finned, and lobe-finned, as I mentioned before. So that some of them have these sort of fleshy stumps that look suspiciously like limbs, like they could turn into limbs.
Like the frogfish.
Yeah, like that. So ecologically, they just do everything. They contribute to the nutrient cycle, the food chain dynamics, and ecosystem resilience, which I think is a fancy way of saying that things eat them, including us, which need things to eat. You gotta have stuff to eat in an ecosystem. And also, they clean things up. They make sure that smaller things are not just lying around rotting and creating way too many bacteria for everybody to survive, except for bacteria. Maybe even the bacteria, because if you get too many and they mess things up, then they don't have anything to eat because everything died. So fishes are, and this is a new word, and it's a little challenging, anamniotic.
Anamniotic, huh?
Anamniotic, yeah. For those of you who are big whining sissies and think that anemone is hard to pronounced. Try this one. Anamniotic.
Okay.
Anamniotes are craniotes who lay their eggs in water, as opposed to amniotes, like you or I, reptiles, fish, and mammals, that either have shelled eggs or carry fertilized eggs inside the female of the species. So I remembered where I, heard this. Amniotic fluid is the fluid in the uterus when there's a baby.
Uh-huh.
So if you don't have that, I guess, so amnio probably needs something about. I don't know exactly what is the root of the word, but yeah, it has to do with having your own internal ocean, basically, because it's basically salt water. Everything we're basically made out of salt water with some other stuff thrown in, a few minerals and things.
Mm-hmm.
And the fish are also classified as basal jawless or jawed. Basal just means origins or anyway, they're just jawless. They're just basically jawless or jawed is the two major classifications of fish. The jawless are older or quote unquote more primitive fish.
Like the hagfish.
There you go. Yeah, they're a beautiful fish with a beautiful name. And there are some people called phylogeneticists who study the evolutionary of history of things using genetics, who view fish as paraphyletic, a paraphyletic taxonomic group, which does not include all the descendants of its common ancestor. So, if it was monophyletic, then all the cousins would get invited to the family reunion. So basically what this means is that all fish are descended from a common ancestor. There's no convergent evolution, things don't keep evolving into fish or anything. It's just the descendants of this one critter. And but not all the cousins get to come to the family reunion because they're not fish-like enough, They're different. They don't like them.
Okay.
And yeah, monophyletic is if that's not true, and all of the descendants are in the taxonomic group. So most fish are cold-blooded. Meaning their body temperature varies with the surrounding water, but some large sharks, for example, can maintain higher core temperatures even in cold water. And here is my zinger fact, and it's super cool. According to physdoc.org article by Macquarie University, was listed as the author, tropical fish have been observed smashing shellfish open on rocks. So fish can now use tools.
So tool use, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like we're down to defining ourselves as humans as like, we're better at it. Basically, we're not the only ones who use tools, though. Not by a long sight.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's really kind of boiling down to, the difference between humans and other creatures is that the humans get to define humans. We get to say that there must be a difference, so because we say so.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca. All right, on to ecological news, and here we go. We got a lot to get through this week. Starting off with some good news, we're going to look at the International Renewable Energy Association's 2024 Renewable Energy Report, and it's pretty encouraging. For the global renewable power, we went up in 2024 by 5.550 gigawatts, or 5,550 gigawatts, which a gigawatt is roughly equal to a nuclear power plant. So we added 5,000 nuclear power plants worth of renewable energy last year around the world. Solar was in the lead with 1,900 gigawatts, followed by hydro with 1,300, and then wind with about 1,100 gigawatts. And there's some other stuff like bioenergy and so forth, but they didn't do that on that scale. So that's really good news. Overall, renewable energy was up 15% in 2024, which is a record. It's never gone up by that much in 1 year before. Solar represented 32% of the increase, wind 11%, solar increased by 32%, wind increased by 11%, biofuels by 3.2%, geothermal by 2.5%, and hydro, even though it increased by 1,300 gigawatts, that's only 1.2%. Solar and wind together were 97% of the new generation done in 2024, And renewables now did 92.5% of the new capacity and now present 47%. So almost half of the total electricity capacity in the world is renewable energy. So Asia led it, and of course China was leading in Asia with 2,400 gigawatts, which is, it's also called 1,000 gigawatts. It's also called a terawatt. So 2.4 terawatts. Europe was next with only like 850 gigawatts. North America trailing with 575 gigawatts. South America 315. Eurasia only 131. And then the lowest increase was Central America and Caribbean area that only had 19 gigawatts of additional renewable energy. Now, we need, the countries have set a goal of tripling renewable energy by 2030, and we still got a long ways to go. We're not on track for tripling by 2030, and we're still not doing this fast enough to reach 100% renewables before we cook ourselves, basically. But again, the pace of the change is increasing. The rate we're accelerating, the growth of nuclear energy, of renewable energy, is accelerating, and so that's really good news. So we still have some hope. We might still get there. All right, so on to our next story, and this is just a reminder of the unreliability of nuclear power. In the U.S., about once a week, a nuke plant shuts down, crashes, I should say, has an accident of some sort and has to scram the reactor, shut it down automatically or manually. And so usually I don't report on them because they happen so often. I'd be doing this every single week. But past week, Monticello nuclear plant shut down Wednesday after control valve issue. That's a story from Fox 9 News at KMSP over in Minnesota that ran on March 23rd. And there's not a lot of detail. They never give much detail, but a control valve issue caused an automatic shutdown. Plant's owned by Xcel Energy. And the reason I brought this one up is because this plant is the plant that in 2023 spilled 400,000 gallons of radioactive tritium into the environment. And that had happened actually back on November 2022. They didn't report on it till 6 months later in 2023. And then a few months after that, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, in its wisdom, granted them a license extension to run the plant out to 2040. So it's just a reminder that these plants, these license extensions, these restarts, they're insane because as the plants get older, they have more and more of these accidents. And even though the NRC says, it's safe to run to 2040, we just had another automatic shutdown that says, no, it's not that safe. We're risking disaster every minute that runs. But another related story, another to bring that back to some positive information, Asahi Shimbun on March 17th, dismantling work begins at Hamoka nuclear plant. So basically in Japan, finally, they're starting their first actual physical teardown of a commercial reactor. It's being dismantled. On the 17th, they actually popped off the reactor pressure vessel lid, which means this thing isn't going to start up again because they've already started taking it apart. It was shut down because of earthquake regulations, which is a rare bit of sanity in the nuclear industry. Okay, now a different sort of insanity. Alaska Beacon on March 28th. Interior Secretary announces ANWR, Alaska National Wildlife Refuge, oil leasing plans. Story. And Doug Burgum is the Interior Secretary now. And he's an oil and gas guy, and he's just announced that they're going to open up basically the whole Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil and gas drilling. They tried this back in January. They actually had some leases, but no oil companies bid on any of those leases. because there were environmental restrictions on doing it, because this is literally the last completely wild place in North America. Now they're expecting that with the Trump administration there will be no restrictions, no environmental protections. They also, at the same press conference, said they're going to open up the National Petroleum Reserve at the same time. Of course, environmental groups like the Sierra Club and Center for Biological Diversity are saying this is a horrible idea. The Gwich'in indigenous tribes of Africa don't want it. The Inupiat tribe, which is 270 members, all of whom, 90% of whom work for the oil industry, do want it. So that's like the one Native American group they got to say, yeah, let's open it up. But actually, there's almost no economic benefit for this. The taxpayer for common sense just did a study of these leases and said at most, possibly the government might come out ahead $3 million to $30 million, perhaps, but it might actually lose money. And part of what's going on here in the world is that fossil demand, it looks like, according to British Petroleum, looks like fossil demand is going to peak this year at 102 million barrels per day. And after that, it's going to start declining because we are putting so much renewables on the market. It's actually starting to impact things. And stuff like the Chinese switching to electric cars en masse, reducing the demand for oil, and that has suppressed the price. Right now, the price of barrel of oil is 69.4 cents. In the last 6 months, the high was only $70, and the low in the last 3 years was only down to $68. So the price of oil has been very steady and is actually starting to decline. And so the idea that you're going to somehow create an economic boom by opening up the last wild area on the continent to unlimited oil and gas drilling, that basic idea is wrong. So bad news over there in Alaska. Okay, moving right along. Back here to Ohio. And we've been reporting on SB 2. That's the law that says that nuclear, coal, and gas are green energy. What has happened is the Ohio House has passed HB 15, which is the companion bill, and that also defines, energy. They say advanced energy sources are coal, nuclear, and gas, and green energy, coal, of course, coal that's been mixed with wood chips or something that reduces its CO2 emissions, nuclear and gas are called green energy in the House version as well. The one good thing in this is that it does remove the coal plant subsidies that have been around since House Bill 6, which is how the Republicans have gotten all the statewide environmental groups to sign on to it, because they've been fighting those coal plant subsidies for 5 years now. And basically, they've gotten to the point where they're willing to overlook the bad stuff in this in order to get that one good part. But the fundamental purpose of all this rewriting of the energy policy seems to be to make it easier for the utilities to build nuclear plants wherever and whenever they want to, which means, if there's a data center in your neighborhood, they might be putting a natural gas plant in, or they might want to put one of these small nuclear reactors, a couple blocks from your house. The main part of what this bill does is it limits the amount of time you have to appeal this, or the amount of time that the Public Service Commission has to look at these proposals in order to speed it along, in order to get these small plants built faster. So that's why groups like Ohio Citizen Action are actually pushing this bill, because it cuts the coal subsidies, but it's not a great thing by any means. Okay, just 2 more stories. We're almost done here. Guardian on March 26th. Trump's climate purge deleted a new extreme weather risk tool. We recreated it. And what the Guardian did was FEMA had a website called the Future Risk Index, and it showed like where you lived and how basically it had 5 different things: heat, wildfire, hurricanes, and drought and coastal flooding. And it put your risk, gave you a number and said how risky it would be to live in those areas. This was part of Trump's attempt to completely wipe out the words climate crisis or global warming from the federal government. All right, last story, local story. Actually, no, we're going to skip that one and go to our real last story. abcnews.com, March 26th. Demonic sea lion reports spark concerns about toxic plague. What's happened is that apparently there's an algae bloom that's releasing something called domoic acid.
Uh-oh.
And in humans, it causes possibly permanent short-term memory loss. So in humans, it causes possibly permanent short-term memory loss. But in sea lions, apparently it turns them into monsters. They start attacking. They're attacking surfers. They're attacking people on the beaches.
So you've got aquatic cocaine bears, essentially.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Yes,
Great.
it's a cocaine bear
That's
in the
what we
water. Yeah. So there's a big bloom now going on there, part of global warming. Let's hope it clears up soon and we don't lose too many sea lions. We lost 1,000 sea lions in 2023 to this disease.
Also surfers. We like them too.
We do like surfers, yes. Okay. That's it for this show. Thanks so much for listening. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
We are signing off. I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun